Welcome to the Bookish Introverts podcast. Join host Amazon bestselling author Brett Nelson and avid reader Melanie Dyer as they dive in to review books they've read, then chat with the amazing authors behind them. Quiet minds, big bookshelves. You don't want to miss it.
Hey, everybody, it's Brett and Melanie, and we are back to discuss another great book. This week, we discussed one of Melanie's favorite authors, L.M. Montgomery,
Yes.
A Tangled Web.
Yes.
And you had told us in the last episode that, you know, L.M. Montgomery has quite a few books, but this is one of two of hers that you have not read.
One of at least two. I have never read Jane of Lantern Hill. I don't know. That's a L.M. Montgomery book, right? If my friend Jessica is listening to this and she says it's not an L.M. Montgomery book, I'm sorry, Jessica. I've disappointed you. I'm pretty sure it's an L.M. Montgomery book. It has an L.M. Montgomery-ish title. I have never read it. I know there's also a movie. But this is the other one that I knew for sure I had not read.
Yeah. And you've even had the physical book. And you still haven't gotten to it.
And I couldn't find it. I had to buy the copy.
Did you really? This time to read it? I
had to buy the digital copy, which it was 99
It was
cents.
99
Not
cents.
that big a deal.
Yeah.
But I could not find it. We moved 4 years ago, and I'm just one of those people. I'm sorry.
You are revealing a lot about yourself right now.
One of those. I don't have a bookcase, so I haven't unpacked all my books. I have a couple that are out, but
oh, okay. All right.
We never did get around to buying a bookcase, and we still haven't gotten around to buying a bookcase.
One of these days, when you least expect it,
someday I will have a bookcase.
Yeah, you will have a bookcase.
But yeah, I had never read this. I knew what it was about. I had a couple of friends that were like, "Oh, you should read it. You should read it," and I just never had. It is.
I can't wait to hear what you thought about it.
Both similar and very different to her usual fare.
Okay.
Similar in that, names and family and places are very important, and descriptions and everything like that. Different in that really the only other, some of her books are geared towards a little bit of an older audience. Other than The Blue Castle, this is the only book of hers I've ever read where there was any noticeable amount of language.
Yeah.
That's not a normal thing.
It's not
a normal thing at all.
And it wasn't, it was minor.
It was minor.
There was some minor
like she was in there dropping F-bombs.
Yeah. So if you're one of our listeners that only reads Christian fiction, you may not want to read this book. But yeah, it did have some minor profanity. And
it was mostly from, I'd say a good 50% of it was from what the family considered less. Language was even part of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
No overabundance of swearing. The two men that were known to swear were like, "Oh, we're not supposed to swear for a year." But it didn't stop them from thinking it, and there were a couple others that I understood their frustrations. If I were to use, that word, I would probably have used it in their shoes.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me. It was just jarring to see it in an L.M. Montgomery book. I was like, I had seen one or two in the past, usually if there was a hired hand around or someone that was not considered lower class. I guess at the time it would have been someone who didn't have many manners, really.
Yeah.
One or two would pop out every now and then. I don't remember any in the Anne books. There might have been one in the second or third Emily books, or any of the stories where she goes a little dark, which would be Emily, this Emily series, The Blue Castle, sometimes maybe Magic for Miracle. It's been a while since I read it, but
and it did kind of surprise me because I'm not normally I don't normally read classic fiction. And so, like, in my mind, I always think of people from way back, because this book, I think, was written in 1931 or 1941. And I'm like, in my mind, I always think of people back then, like, being morally superior than we are these days. You know what I'm saying?
It would have been written. I'm thinking, and I didn't look it up, but we're definitely talking about at least mid to late 20s.
Oh, okay.
There's mention of flappers, which were still a thing in the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a mention of the war, because a few characters had served in it. A few characters were widowed during it. But it was far enough in the past that no one really talked about it anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking mid to late 20s. She has the only book I know of that actually runs into. I can trace the timeline of the Anne books. It's ridiculous, but I can do it. It's very sad that I can. Her Pat series, the second book, runs, I think, for 12 years, and it actually runs into the years of World War II. But no mention is made of World War II because she actually wrote it before that was really a blip, sort of, in Canada. Like, I can't remember when she passed away, but we'll cover that in the bio.
Yeah, as I say, I actually did look her up on Wikipedia, and I can't remember when. But I was going to tell you before we kind of get into the bio, I had a funny little incident.
Yeah.
I think I dreamed of the podcast because I woke up.
Really?
Yes, I woke up this morning, and I thought we had already recorded it, but I was like, I think I had my own personal Mandela effect moment because I was like, I can still remember us recording it. And I'm like, I can't remember what I said or what we did. Did I do something or say something stupid? Like, in my mind, I still feel like we've already recorded. Isn't that weird?
It is odd. Maybe you'll get a sense of deja vu while you're recording.
Maybe
today. That would be strange.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, maybe I just had my own personal Mandela effect moment. I mean, for those who don't know what a Mandela effect is, that's when people have, and a lot of times it's people that it's like broadly where people remember something. It's a false remembering of something that actually wasn't true. It's like a mass false memory.
It's kind of like in Empire Strikes Back, when everyone goes around quoting Darth Vader and says, Luke, I am your father. That's not what he says. Yeah. That's the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
He says, no, I am your father.
Yeah.
It's not Luke, I am your father. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, kind of like that. And there's one in Risky Business. There's a Mandela effect in Risky Business. The Tom Cruise movie when he was really young. The scene where he's kind of wearing that long shirt. He's in his underwear and he's kind of skids across the floor in his socks. What do you remember about what he's wearing in that scene? I want to see if your memory of it is.
Well, he's wearing boxers and he's in a button-down shirt. And it's,
yes.
It's really sad. The one I remember the most is the one where they did this on The Nanny.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But I don't remember what he has he has something in his hand, but I don't remember what it is.
Do you
hairbrush?
remember him wearing sunglasses in that scene?
No.
You don't remember. Tons of people think he wore sunglasses in that scene. And they're like, he wore sunglasses in that scene. And if you look online and like people dressing up for Halloween or whatever, and
they're in sunglasses, and he wasn't in sunglasses.
Yes, massive amounts of people think that he wore sunglasses in that scene. And I remembered him wearing sunglasses. So like, where does that come from?
Huh.
Yeah, and it's weird. And there's one with Britney Spears where she's, and I don't follow Britney Spears, but she, like, in one of her videos, she's wearing like a black mini skirt, and everyone swears up and down that in the original video she wore a plaid skirt.
Oh, Baby One More Time.
Is that it?
Baby One More Time. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Pretty sure that's it. Yeah, because I thought it was a plaid skirt too.
See?
But no, it's a black skirt.
Yeah, and it's
a black skirt.
It's little things like that. So I was
funny.
Maybe I remember us recording this podcast because I had my own personal Mandela effect.
I will say just to return to the language one more time, there is a word that is used at the end of the book that I was not expecting.
We're going to talk about that. Yes.
We do not endorse it.
No, we do not endorse it.
It was a product of its time.
Yeah. And we will talk about that when we get.
We'll discuss it more later.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was
not an endorsement.
Yeah. No.
By any means.
Yeah. And it's literally like in the last 2 sentences of the book.
It was. And I went,
yeah.
What was that?
Yeah. So, yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that at the end. So, all right. So, do you want to give us a little bio of Miss Montgomery?
Okay. So, L.M. Montgomery, Lucy Maud Montgomery. She was born on November 30th, born in November, as all wonderful people are. Not that my birthday's in November or anything.
Well, we can throw a big birthday party.
Born November 30th, 1874 on Prince Edward Island, which is where most of her books take place, if not all, I believe. Mother died before she was even 2 years old. And I think that's part of why she feels akin with orphans and why she writes about them so much. And as a lot of men would have done back then, her father gave her over to grandparents, her mother's parents, to raise. And he took off to the west, out to Saskatchewan. So she's raised by her grandparents, an only child, learned to, I was an only child for a long time. So I had cousins, but you learn to entertain yourself. You got your imagination, and that's what she did.
If you don't got nothing else, you got your imagination.
Absolutely. So she started writing when she was 9, poetry. I was never very good at poetry.
I was never a poetry person.
She also kept a journal. I found this interesting. The family farm, I think her uncle and her aunt, was called Silverbush, and she was very fond of it, and that's actually in one of her books, her Pat of Silverbush.
Oh, okay.
And the whole overarching stories, overarching story about it is Pat Patricia and how much she loves her home, and she doesn't love anything more than she loves Silverbush. So I didn't know that about her. But she had a teacher's license from Prince of Wales College, and she taught for a little bit and then went back to university to study English Lit. And it was unusual at the time for a woman to go to a 4-year university. A 2-year college, that's where you get your teacher's license. And then eventually married in 1911. But before that, she wrote her first novel in 1905.
I was wondering when was she an adult? Like, how old was she when she wrote her first?
Well,
and that was Anne of Green Gables. Right?
Yes, she had written, I think, some poems and short stories, and she had made a little bit of money at it in the years intervening.
And it's not easy to make money, right?
No,
I'm just saying.
no. And of course, this is a time when you could sell poems and
she probably
short
didn't
stories
have time in a future.
to magazines to publish, both Canadian and American.
Yeah.
She earned $96.88 in 1899.
And that was probably a lot in 1889.
It was quite a bit.
That barely gives you a tank of gas these days.
That's the truth. Let's see, 1874, so 26, she would have been 31 when she wrote Anne of Green Gables. And then sent it to several publishers and rejected. Every one of them rejected.
Well, common story.
So she put it away and then decided to try again.
J.K. Rowling in Harry Potter was denied 41 times.
That's true. Try again.
Can you imagine being those 41 people that said no? They are bashing their head against a wall right now.
That's true.
Anyway.
That's true.
Yeah.
But she tried again in 1907 and it was accepted and became published in 1908, became a huge hit.
And this is a very good life lesson.
Yeah.
Don't give up your dreams. Just
Don't give up
because
your
somebody
dreams.
says no, keep trying.
Now, I remember hearing something about this, but she had been sort of courting a gentleman, a Reverend Ewan MacDonald, and but did not marry him until after her grandmother had passed away. Her grandfather passed away several years before, but she lived with her grandmother, took care of her grandmother, and she did not marry the Reverend Ewan MacDonald until after her grandmother passed.
Why did she wait?
I'm not sure. Her romantic past is a little odd.
Oh, okay.
She'd been engaged twice before. Well, not engaged twice before. She had been engaged once before to her cousin,
Had been
her
proposed
third
to.
cousin,
Oh.
and she was not happy
Well, I
that
mean,
she was engaged to him.
can you be happy with your third cousin maritally?
Just, you know.
I mean, I don't know who any of my third cousins are, but I don't think I would want to be married to them.
As is touched on in this book. Well, not touched on. It's slammed down. A lot of families considered that
normal
back
then.
It was the thing. It was the done thing. You married within the family and keep those crazy outsiders out of the bloodline.
And
we all know how that turned out for I was going to say the Targaryens, but they're not real. And now I can't remember the name of that royal family that cracks me up so much that has basically died out because of it.
Because they wouldn't marry
look up some of their pictures sometime. The name will come to me, but the pictures are hilarious. Portraits. They try to make them look nice. It doesn't work.
It didn't work.
It's horrible.
This is a good moral lesson. Again, do not marry in the family if you don't want to look like that.
Now, this is, she had left the island, I think, to go to university, and I think she lived with her biological father for a year or so. And those are the only two times I know of that she left the island. But when she married Ewan MacDonald, she left the island again on Ontario. I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm sorry, Ontario.
Yeah. Now, was she in competition with like Emily Bronte and like were they all writing at the same time?
No.
Were women authors?
It was a little less taboo.
Okay.
In her time, Bronte sisters were mid 1800s. I believe.
Oh, so they were before her,
or early to mid, not early. Like I'm saying early, like 18 era of like 1820 through 1860.
I'm guessing you've read their work too.
Only Wuthering Heights.
Okay.
And both the main characters in that were horrible people. It was hard to feel sorry for them, but you feel sorry for people because they want you to feel sorry for them.
Yes, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I think the Bronte sisters were like somewhere in between 1820 and 1860.
Oh, okay.
If you're a fan of the Brontes, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm not a Bronte.
Do not send us hate mail for that.
I can give you, a timeline on Jane Austen. I can give you a timeline on Louisa May.
But if you want to send hate mail about it, Melanie's phone number is.
They did have 3 sons. Well, 2 sons living. And she, during all this time, she kept writing. There's, several Anne books, 3 Emily books, 2 Pat books, and that's not even counting all the standalone books and the short stories that people have compiled and made into books, and Kilmeny of the Orchard, which is a very interesting book.
Kill Me in the Orchard?
Kilmeny.
Oh, Kilmeny.
It's about a girl named Kilmeny.
Oh, that's an interesting name.
Kilmeny of the Orchard. Oh. I thought so. It's a little different from her.
Still up for a character in one of my books.
Yeah. So she had a son, Hugh, who died stillborn. She seemed to be a very sensitive person. A lot of artistic people are. They feel things very deeply. She had trouble a lot with her emotions. I think she may have gone through depression. I do. Now, I don't know that they would have diagnosed it as such then. Women.
Yeah.
if they think something's wrong with a woman, sometimes they just lock her up in the asylum and she needs, electroshock therapy.
Especially back in her day.
Back in her
when
day.
they didn't know a lot of it. Like,
I don't mean now.
Like if you were depressed back then, that was pretty much, you got locked into an insane asylum.
Yes.
Or something.
She left Ontario in 1935 and then moved to, Toronto. And after her husband died in 1943, L.M. Montgomery moved back to Prince Edward Island. She died in 1942.
Okay.
Her husband died the year after, but I guess one of her sons moved her back to the island that she loved.
Oh, okay.
Which was nice of them.
That was nice of him, yeah.
She is, all but one of her 20 books are set on Prince Edward Island.
Oh.
Wonder which one isn't set. I bet it's Jane of Lantern Hill, the one I have not read. Prince Edward Island, if I remember correctly, L.M. Montgomery is technically the official author of Canada.
Oh.
She is very celebrated in Canada. Like there's an L.M. Montgomery Day.
Their
I'm
biggest,
pretty sure she
their
is
most well-known author. Probably.
And she's really big in like Japan.
Really?
Anne of Green Gables is a huge deal, and I think it's Japan. But yeah, you could go to the Green Gables. Of course, there was a mini series that they made, not the one on Netflix. There was a mini series that they made on Canadian television. The Disney Channel showed it when I was 10, I think. Megan Follows, Jonathan Crombie, Colleen Dewhurst. Amazing miniseries, and it was a huge hit, and it boosted tourism, and it's a huge deal. Yeah, they even have a play, I believe, that they perform in Charlottetown.
Oh,
Anne of Green Gables, the play.
Cool.
We don't talk about the Netflix show, and that's.
Yes. She made that clear in the very first episode of our podcast.
I think
we were not happy with the Netflix version. Yes,
but that miniseries was actually my first introduction to L.M. Montgomery, and then I found out there were books. I was like,
"So you saw the series and then read the books?"
Yeah, it was on the Disney Channel one night. My mom was out, and I had a babysitter, and we came across it on the Disney Channel.
We're talking.
This is interesting.
Teenage Melanie or kid
Melanie. I think we were living in the apartment, so I was 9, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe 9. But when I found out there were books, I was like,
"You're like, get me the books
me.
now.
I need to know what happens next." So that's what started it, and I just never did look back. Oh, there's more books. Oh,
well, I read an interesting thing about L.M. because she died, and I can't remember what the article said. They attributed her death to something, but now they think she may have committed suicide.
Yeah,
what do you think
saw
happened?
that.
Do you have we know you got opinions about stuff.
I think
she has opinions.
Someone of her sensitivity and artistic people are more inclined to bouts of depression and things like that, in my opinion. I'm no expert, but that's my opinion. I think it's possible. She doesn't go down in my estimation if that is the case.
No, not at all.
Mental health, there are still a lot of people who don't take it seriously. I certainly don't think any less of her for it. She doesn't go down. She was still, in my opinion, a brilliant writer.
And I don't think anyone has actually said she had committed suicide. I think that's some people just suspect.
I'm not sure. I think
it doesn't really matter one way or the other.
I think maybe one of her descendants said something about it, and everyone's running with it, but I'm not sure anyone really knows.
Yeah, and that's the key. No one really
knows. At the time, that would have been a huge taboo, and they would not. I mean, people still don't want to talk about it if it happens today. If a family member does that, he passed away.
Yes.
So back then, even worse.
And it's not something that anybody needs to know,
Yeah, really, it's no one's business.
It's not. It's not.
It really is no one's business. I think it's a 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she had a reason to commit suicide, but there rarely is. You know, she had 2 sons. Her husband was still alive, but you know, you never know. You never know what's going on.
And conceivably, she was making
mind.
money from her books. Since Anne of Green Gables was really popular, I mean, conceivably, she had money.
She could have been.
I don't know.
I mean, she could have been ill and died. She could have had heart attacks. Don't know. Don't know.
And it doesn't matter. I just thought that would be something interesting to bring up on the podcast.
I'm not sure. I thought it was pretty much settled that she had committed suicide, but then I read, well, some believe it, but some are saying it's this some sort of pulmonary thing. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Either way, I still love her.
Either way, she is
still love her. Still my favorite.
Still great in our eyes.
Still love her. Still my favorite. I have a hard time thinking of anything that would unseat her.
So take us into the book. Let's talk about the book.
So we have this huge clan made up of the Darks and Penhallows. And again, this is where we come with the, you know, if you've ever watched Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, this is where we come with the intersection of family and intermarriage and shame on you for watching those shit. No, I'm sorry, I had to. I know everything about them, so no judgment. But the Darks and the Penhallows apparently have been marrying one another for generations.
Yes.
It's expected.
They don't really marry outside of their two families.
It's expected. It's
which
not.
Is kind of weird.
It is weird. But not to them, and probably not to a lot of the people around. It was very common. See, y'all think Southerners are the only people? Oh, a bunch of inbred Southerners. No.
And we wear shoes too, just to clear the air on that.
Yeah, he has shoes on.
I went to a singing school in Nashville years ago when I was young, probably in my 20s. And when one of the ladies that went there, when she found out I was from Arkansas, she looked down and goes, "Oh my word, you're wearing shoes." Why would I not be wearing shoes?
What are y'all saying about us?
That's great. I was like, yeah, people in Arkansas wear shoes.
That's goofy.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
So the matriarch of the family is Aunt Becky. Everyone just calls her Aunt Becky, and she has
and she has a big personality.
She does, and she doesn't care what anyone thinks of her either. She does not. And she decides she knows she's going to die. So now I'm going to die. I'm going to have a party before I do. I'm going to have a gathering of the clan. She calls it a levy. And that confused me in the book because it took a while to figure out what a levy was before she explained it. And she kept saying, you know, little things about the levy. And she said something about little Uncle Pippin said that he wouldn't miss one of Aunt Becky's levies for a dog fight. And then someone said, I'm going to have a levy, Aunt Becky. And I was like, what's a levy? But finally, she in the narrative of the book, it's explained that a levy is what Aunt Becky called her meetings that everybody in the family was required to come to. The gathering of the clan. Yeah. So they all, I guess,
because when I think of levy, I think of I drove my Chevy to the levy, but the levy was
dry. They all crowd into these 2 rooms. They must be big rooms that she rents in this home. And she's in bed, and they're all just sitting around her bed, and she's not providing refreshments, which offends several of them.
She wants to make sure everybody knows she's about to die, so she's in bed. Yeah.
Yes. There's no food, so people are very upset about that.
Never have a party without food. That's a good way to get unpopular.
On purpose. She does it on purpose. She knows what she's doing. And whenever someone comes in, she takes a swipe at them.
Yes.
Yes. Sly swipes, blunt swipes.
But I have to say, some of it was funny.
Oh yeah, funny, no doubt.
You told me from the very beginning that L.M. Montgomery in her books, a lot of her characters have a very sharp sense of humor.
Yes.
and I was like, yeah, she really does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can appreciate a sharp sense of humor because I kind
Absolutely.
of have one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's fun because you get to meet a lot of characters, and a lot of the characters you meet really aren't going to play a big part in it. But at the time, you don't know who's going to play the biggest
who the main
parts.
characters are. Yeah, and that's one thing that kind of I had a hard time in the book. There were so many darn characters. I'm like to this day,
many.
I've read the whole book, and I probably couldn't name 5 characters. Because there's so many of them.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
And so, like she said,
and
some of them
just pop up throughout the book every once in a while.
And
as a background character.
Yeah.
Some of them.
So is that normal in her books? Are there normally that
many
usually
characters? She has just, the main character and then the supporting characters around.
Okay. Yeah.
This was indeed a very tangled web.
It was very much. It was a very aptly named book.
Yes.
Because it was definitely a tangled web.
Yeah. So Aunt Becky has everyone, young and old, that are in varying degrees of caring. They're mostly there out of curiosity. No one really cares much for Aunt Becky.
Yes.
Because of the aforementioned swipes.
Yes.
Yes. But she proceeds to read her obituary out loud, which was hilarious.
That was hilarious.
And they're all just, horrified because she says, this is what's going to be published when I die. And they're like, you can't publish that? How horrible.
It's very clear that she put a lot of time and energy into writing her obituary.
Yes. And it's fantastic.
Which
I thoroughly enjoy reading it.
I may write my own obituary.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. And then she proceeds to read out the will and give out some of her things already. She gives out a diamond ring to a person who's not really technically, she's only half a family member. Mm-hmm. So people are upset about that.
Which is scandalous.
Yes, people are upset about that. But I was happy for her because she was thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
She gives out a bottle of Jordan water, which I didn't understand what it was until I was like, oh, you idiot. Someone went across, they went to the Middle East and got water out of the River Jordan.
I Googled it because I thought it was like some sort of like 1940s perfume.
No.
Yeah. So but I kind of came to the conclusion that it was from the Jordan River.
From the Jordan River.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me a while to figure that one out.
It took me until
because when I Googled Jordan water, it didn't really bring anything up. It brought up the Jordan River, and I was like, I wonder if it. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
It took me until Jocelyn was thinking about what she had done as a child.
And I'm going to say, I cracked up when the woman spilled the Jordan water and replenished it with tap water.
Yes. That's when I realized, oh,
yeah,
Jordan water. Okay. Yeah. I get it now.
Like Aunt Becky was like so proud of her Jordan water. It was tap water.
Yeah. So, she gives out all this stuff. And then what's left is this jug. Which isn't even a super pretty jug from all accounts. Way out of fashion. It was made the way they described it when they tell the story about it later. It was apparently made in the Georgian era, Georgian or Regency.
Okay, what era is that?
That would be early 1800s.
Okay, I don't know all the eras.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. George IV. Who was George IV? I don't remember. But it was procured for a member of the family by her beau, who was a captain on a ship, and he bought it at the time this member of the family still lived in London. So he was off sailing and he'd gotten this vase, jug, whatever you call it, to bring home to her. And then on the way home, there was a storm and he died, and it's all very tragic, but someone delivered and then she died not long after, and it's passed down through the family and come across the sea to Canada and all this stuff.
And there are some people in the family, it's very important for them to be the one to get the vase or the jug after Aunt Becky's gone, and there are others that couldn't care less.
Yeah.
And there are some that only want it just so this person doesn't get it. So,
yes.
I mean,
it's not that they think it's pretty. It's not that they love it. It's just that it's a family heirloom, and it should go to a family member, and why shouldn't that family member be then?
Yeah.
It's so silly.
Yeah. Well,
but that's the whole point.
I don't know
so
if
silly.
Do you read reviews on the books you read very much?
Not too much.
See, I don't read them so much to help me decide if I want to read books. Unless it's a new author, like sometimes I'll read the bad reviews, especially on a secular book, to see if there's any profanity or if there's any dirty scenes. But a lot of the bad reviews on this book was because of the Star and Jug. This is so stupid. Why are these people fighting over? I'm like, people, it's 1930.
That's the point.
That's all they had in 1930. Get over it.
That was the whole point.
Don't give a book a bad review just because you don't like the plot.
It's supposed to be silly.
Yes.
That these people care
It's not
so
supposed
much
to be
about this jug.
a serious book.
This is not supposed to be showing these people in their best light.
But that just goes to show people these days, I don't think they get, well, in general, in books, they don't get. But especially on classic books, I don't think people get, and I'm putting myself in that category. I don't read classic books a lot. So, like, I even found myself thinking, all this for a jug. I really did. But I got that was,
that was the point. Even
but
then,
I'm not going to give the story a one-star review because everybody was clamoring for this stupid jug.
Even then, when family heirlooms really they don't mean as much as they used to.
They don't. No.
But even then, when they meant more, this is supposed to be silly. Why is this group of probably at least 30 people that are mentioned?
Massive group of people.
Not to mention the kids, not to mention the people that are even more in the background. Why are they tearing themselves to pieces over this jug? Mm-hmm. No one knows. It's so ridiculous. And she knows it's ridiculous.
Yes, and Becky knows what she's doing.
She doesn't care that much that she even has the jug.
And every time I read Aunt Becky, I thought of Full House. I just had to say that.
That's funny. So she has, we're introduced to some characters. We've got some pair-ups, some romantic, some not. Mm-hmm. There is Hugh and Jocelyn, who are married and haven't lived together at all. Mm-hmm. They've been married for 10 years and they've never lived together. It's a long story. It's a little bit of a silly story, and bless you.
Yes. And Aunt Becky knows everything about everyone, and she will use her knowledge against people. Yeah.
And she doesn't know. Now, that is the one thing she doesn't know. She doesn't know why Jocelyn left Hugh's home the night of their wedding.
True.
Until after the levy, and she has Jocelyn tell her, and Jocelyn tells her willingly.
Jocelyn tells her.
But you don't find out until later in the book.
Way later in the book.
Yeah. So we've got Hugh and Jocelyn. Those are two main characters. Uncle Pippin pops up every once in a while to give his 2 cents.
He's kind of a funny guy too.
Yes. Dandy is the one who's given trust of the jug.
He's kind of the
he's
wheel.
Supposed to open the letter in a year to let everyone know who gets it, because she doesn't give it away right then. She says, no. You'll find out in a year. She
makes them wait. Yes.
You'll find out in a year. In the meantime, it's Dandy's. He can keep a secret better than anyone. So he's going to keep it safe, and he's going to keep my letter safe as to who gets it. So we've got Hugh and Jocelyn. We got Pippin. We got Dandy. We've got what we didn't expect to become a thing, Roger and Donna.
Yes.
Who inexplicably fall in love at first sight at this levy. They haven't seen each other in years since they were kids, and just suddenly there it is. So they're in love.
Yeah.
There's Gay and Nan. I'm going to put them as a pair together because they're of the younger generation. They're about the same age. Nan is a modern girl. Flapper, rouge, hair bobbed, everything like that. And Gay Penhallow, which I can't remember her full name, but she's called Gay. They're both pretty, but in different ways. Nan is like silky, sultry type, and Gay is just a very innocent, youthful, and she's in love with Noel Gibson, who is not in the family. No one likes him.
Not Mel Gibson. Noel Gibson.
Noel.
Noel.
Noel Gibson. Although maybe they pronounced it Noel. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's Noel. I've never
pronounced
heard the
it
name.
Noel because there was a character in the TV show Felicity. His name was Noel, and they pronounced it. It was spelled.
Yeah, that's how I pronounced it.
So
Noel.
I pronounced it Noel. Yeah.
So she's in love with Noel Gibson, and the entire time she's at the levee, she's just like, "Oh, when do I get to see Noel? I'm supposed to think of Noel at this time." And you know, she's 18. It's a really good imagery of an 18-year-old girl in love, honestly.
Yeah. Now there was one of these couples. I can't remember which one it was. I want to talk about it when you get to them. About it, Roger and Donna. Are they the ones that kind of decided to get married at some point in the book?
Roger and Donna were the ones that just like fell in love at first sight when they happened to look at each other at the levee.
Okay.
And they hadn't seen each other since they were kids. Okay. Yeah. There is also Margaret, who is an old maid. And she just, she lives in her brother's house. All she wants is there's this house that sits abandoned. She wants that home, and she wants a little baby. She wants to adopt a baby, and it's we're talking mid 1920s here. It's not really an option for her. Her family is not the Darks and the Penhallows. They don't really believe in women going out and earning a living. So in the meantime, she just lives with her brother, and it's very sad. I feel bad for Margaret, but she's a seamstress. She makes dresses, and she finds joy in that, but she finds no joy in living in her brother's house. She doesn't like her nieces and nephews. They're horrible little kids, and I sympathize with her. There's nothing worse than a bratty kid. I mean, I don't know any personally, but I've seen some. And
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. I may or may not know some bratty kids.
Because, I mean, kids just don't care. They'll just be mean. They don't care.
Yeah.
So there's
kids
Margaret.
Are really mean these days.
Roger is, now back to Roger and Donna. Donna is a widow. Her husband died. She got married. He shipped off. He was killed. And he was a friend of Roger's. And Roger was mad that his friend got married. And he didn't like Donna even before that.
How dare you get married and be happy?
He saw her one day in church when he was 12 and she was 8, and he made a face at her and she laughed at him. He's like, how dare she laugh at me? I hate this girl. Yeah. But it fits because their fathers hate each other too.
Yes.
Long story about a dog. We're not going to get into it.
Yes.
But he hasn't seen her since that day. He didn't go to the wedding because he was mad at his friend for getting married, especially to her. And then he sees her at this levee and he's like,
it's you.
Who is this?
Yeah.
She's gorgeous. I love her. And she feels the same. She's always said she'll never marry anyone after her husband. And she and another chum are war widows, and this is what they do. They talk about being widows. And it's after she sees Roger that she's like, this is kind of ridiculous. The fact that we're just wallowing while we're still young. Would my late husband want this? And so she goes through all that.
And I think that's a valid thing when when your spouse has died. I think it's normal to think, am I dishonoring my deceased loved one?
Yes.
So.
And then we have Little Sam and Big Sam, who are cousins, I think. Pretty sure they're cousins. They live together, confirmed bachelors. Or, well, I think Little Sam has been married once before. Big Sam is definitely a confirmed bachelor. And they live together near the sea. They don't really care for anything that's going on here. I'm sorry, not Roger and Donna. Peter and Donna.
Okay, yeah.
Peter and Donna. Roger's a completely different
There's
person.
There's so many characters,
I
can't remember which ones belong to you.
Peter and Donna.
And they were pretty big in the story.
Yes.
Their plot line was pretty predominant in the story.
So Big Sam and Little Sam, they live together, and they're just there to listen. They don't care really anything about the jug. They don't think they're going to get it. It'd be nice if they got it. But Little Sam is actually really big, and Big Sam is actually smaller. So, there's that. But everyone leaves the levy in like a flurry. Like, well, who do you think's going to get it? Well, I think I should get it. Well, and there's all these conditions: no swearing, no drinking, no, you got to behave yourself. You got to do this and do that. And nothing yet Becky would disapprove of.
Yes.
For sure. Mind your P's and Q's.
She was being manipulative even in death.
Even in death. Because like a week after this levy, Aunt Becky
met her
gone.
demise. Yes.
And she knew it was going to happen too. She was like, give me clean sheets and I'm just going to,
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
So, you got to give her props for knowing when her time is coming.
I don't know how she knew, but
she knew.
Yeah.
So.
Because it's not like she was ailing like with heart problems or anything so like that. So I don't know how she knew, but she knew.
So I want to go to Gay and Nan for a minute because it's interesting to me. Nan is a very spiteful girl. She has to have all the attention. Mm-hmm. And she is determined and tells Gay straight out, take Noel from you. I like your Noel. I think I'll take him.
Just so you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And Gay says, ha ha.
And I mean, props to her for being.
I mean, she's just upfront about, I'm going to take your man.
I'm going to take your man. And I just want to make sure you know that.
I'll take your man.
She didn't sliver in the grass.
No. She wasn't sneaky about it. She told her up front, I'm going to take him.
Yeah. Go girl.
And, innocent little Gay Penhollow, she's like, you're not going to take him? He loves me.
Yeah.
So, and it's supposed to be a reflection of how young she is. And Nan comes from outside the island. She's not an island girl. She's from the big city. Mm-hmm. Most of the family has no use for her because she's modern.
No.
She's a modern girl. With, she's one of those fast women, probably. Look at all the legs she's showing.
Exactly. Yeah. And,
because she's a flapper.
Is she the one that went to the dance in the movie? Or in the book?
Yes, she goes to the dance.
Because there was one thing that kind of I thought was funny. She's going to the dance and she's wearing a dress that is low cut in the back. It shows
almost backless.
It shows some back, which was apparently some of the people said some things about it.
It was a style.
Yeah. I just thought, oh my gosh, this is so, showing some back. I mean, they would be astounded at what people wear this.
It's funny because if you look at 1930s fashion, which I love, 30s and 40s, a lot of the evening gowns, I mean, they're almost completely backless. They're gorgeous. I mean, it covers almost everything else, but the back, I thought it was funny that they considered a backless dress as immodest. Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, you've got to remember, before the war, the girls were covered.
Yeah.
You didn't. Yeah. You showed maybe a little at a party or a dance, maybe a little off the shoulder, possibly.
Yeah.
But you didn't.
Well, and there was even a comment in the narrative. Nobody said it. It was just in the narrative of the book. And it says, the young people of today have neither manners nor morals. I was like, oh, honey, wait till 2024. Wait till 2024 and you will really see people with no morals. They do. Yeah. Although I always hate that they don't have morals thing because everybody has morals. They either have good ones or they have bad ones. Anyway, yeah. When I read that, I was like, oh. Yeah. Yeah. So we're following all these people and it jumps around but we're following them through the year. Mm-hmm. And to stick with Gay and Nan, since Nan is a guest, she runs around with a lot with Gay and Noel, and Gay's slowly starting to realize she doesn't see as much of Noel as she used to, and Nan is always with them when she does. She doesn't get any time alone with him. And then she picks up the phone and they're talking on the phone, and she's like, "They're talking on the phone," and she tries to dismiss it. Why should I care? Why should I care? Mm-hmm. But then one night, Noel doesn't show up.
And then he calls her the next day and gives her all these excuses. And they're engaged at this point. And the only thing her mother has insisted on is they wait a year before they get married.
Good advice.
Good advice.
Mm-hmm.
They're engaged at this point. And Noel calls and he's like, the tires and the thing and all these good excuses. And Gay, bless her heart, believes him because she's a girl in love, a teenage girl in love.
Yeah.
And she has no reason to think he would be, loves her,
Yeah.
And then the night of the dance, this dance she wants to go to comes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the last dance of the summer. And then Noel calls and says, "Oh, I have to work."
Okay. Yeah. That guys, do not do that.
Don't do that.
That is bad.
I have to work.
Yeah.
So at this point, she's already suspicious. And she's like, I have to know. I have to know. So in comes Roger. This is where Roger comes in. Now, Roger is absolutely desperately in love with Gay. Everyone knows it.
Unrequited.
He knows it. She knows it. And she likes him. She's very fond of him, which is why she doesn't want to hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
But they're friends. And he swings by. He's a doctor. He's the doctor in the clan. He swings by and she asks him to take her to the dance. She said, "Will you take me to the dance?" And he doesn't want to do it because he has a feeling she's not going to like what she sees. He doesn't want her hurt. But he takes her to the dance and drops her off. She does not let him wait for her or go in with her. And sure enough, there's Nan and Noel. And that's pretty much the end of that. And of course, she's just heartbroken, devastated as only an 18-year-old girl because she loved him. I'm not. And
like, did he think she was not going to go to the dance if she
well,
didn't?
A girl show up to the dance alone?
That would be scandalous. Yes,
please.
True. Yeah.
Especially when she had a bow.
Back in that day, going stag was not a thing.
Yeah. So yeah, a guy could go by himself, but a girl would be less likely to.
A woman of questionable morals.
So just because people would laugh, so she's just devastated, and that's her heartbreak. That's where it leaves her.
Although L.M. Montgomery could have went ahead and did that, and then she could have written her own version of Carrie. She missed out on a good opportunity.
I've read some of her supernatural stories. Listen, L.M. Montgomery, fully capable of going in that direction.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Check out Among the Shadows.
I may have to check that out.
Among the Shadows is her compilation of like supernatural, ghosty type.
I'm going to check those out.
So and again, this goes back to, had the question of the jug not been raised at this levy, none of this would have happened, because the only reason Nan is still on the island is because her mother wants that jug. That's the only reason. Mm-hmm. So Nan would have gone home and none of this would have happened. So that's how it goes back to the jug. Then you've got Peter and Donna, who Peter, bless his heart. Peter is just enthralled with Donna, and they're just like, well, this will never work. This will never work. Her father will never, and she's fighting against this friend of hers who's also saying, well, how could you be disloyal? And but she's like, no, I love him. I love him. I love him.
Yeah.
And her father will have none of it. Drown John. And he's called Drown John because there's another John in the clan, but he never drowned.
He never drowned.
That's the explanation.
And I'm sorry, that's hilarious.
That is the explanation in the book, almost word for word. And that's part of why it's like, well, of course, why would you call John Drown John if he'd never drowned?
Exactly.
So
I just thought that was hilarious.
Perfect. Yeah. And he has a temper. He's a horrible temper, and he is not about to let his daughter marry the son of his sworn enemy. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So they're conspiring to keep them apart. Peter, who is an adventurer, he's been to all these places. He was set to go to the Amazon that night until he saw Donna, and he was like, no, I have to stay. Yeah. I have to have her. I will carry her off bodily if I have to.
Yeah.
He's like, just come on, let's go. We'll elope. And she's a clan girl. She doesn't want, it appeals to her, but at the same time, it does not appeal to her.
Mm-hmm.
So she really kind of wants her father's blessing, but he finally, talks her into it, but he doesn't do it until after she has a bout of measles, tonsillitis. I think there was something else in there, but at one point when she has the measles, Peter's just beside himself. He wants to see her, and of course he's not allowed in the house. Mm-hmm. Roger is called out because he's the clan doctor, and the scene between I even made a note of it. The scene between Roger and Peter, when Roger
actually made it,
when Roger is trying to get Peter to get in the car and go home, is just hilarious because Peter is just going on and on. Oh, Roger, you have no idea what it's like to be so in love, and Roger's like, don't I? And I could just, I don't know how, but I could like hear his voice, this very dry, yeah, whatever. Yeah. And of course, Peter knows that Roger's in love with Gay. And he's like, even if I was a cradle robber like you, I'm like, oh, Peter, Roger's going to take you. But Peter's just on and on and on and on. And it's really just pathetic. And Roger's just shut up and get in the car. And, he's really had enough. Roger has a lot of patience. Mm-hmm. I'd argue he might be one of the best members of the family. Yeah. He has endless amounts of patience, apparently. So he finally gets Peter in the car and promises to take a message to Gay. Well, once Drowned John figures out that Roger's shuffling messages between the two, he shows Roger the door and brings in an outside doctor. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, recovering from stuff like this takes a long time.
It does. Yeah.
It took a very long time. It takes a long time now. It took a long time then.
Yeah.
And then she gets tonsillitis, but finally Peter manages to get to her in church one day and says, it creates a scandal.
It does create a scandal.
It picks a woman up by the waist bodily. Way. I'm like,
literally,
man, I wish I could do that in the church. Like, woman, get out of my way. And then gets to her. She's between her father and I think her sister. I think Thecla is her sister. And that name only stuck in my head because it's just so bizarre.
It is.
Thecla. But she's between her father and her sister. Her father is preoccupied talking to someone. Her sister's not out of the pew yet. He rushes over, kisses her in the church.
Yeah. And Dad's been watching to make sure he does not show up. Yeah.
And whispers in her ear to meet him at a gate at 11 o'clock at night. And she's like, you know what? Yeah.
I'm on.
But then he just makes a mad dash out, jumps the partition between the pews and dashes out the door. And everyone's just like,
what was that?
Happened?
Yeah.
And then she gets an earful from her father when she goes home for causing a scene in the church.
Yes.
And she decides, yeah, absolutely. This isn't worth it. She's been without this man she loves for weeks, and she is going to go and marry him. She doesn't care what anyone thinks.
Yeah. Yeah, she doesn't.
So she goes down and waits. And of course it's cold. She's underdressed because what she remembers are summer evenings. Well, it's autumn now. She hadn't realized it had gotten cold, and all the time she'd been sick. She's only been out of the house a couple of times since then. And, so by the time he arrives, he's a little bit late because his tires, something about his tires, I think.
Yeah.
A legitimate excuse. But she's cold and wet, and she's in a bad mood by the time he gets there.
Yeah.
And she's just a little chilly with him. Mm-hmm. She's annoyed. And he's just oblivious.
He is a man. He is a man.
He has never entertained the thought of marrying before. So I'm willing to bet he's never even courted a girl or given a girl a second thought until this.
Yeah.
He has no idea how to talk to a woman. So he's just taking her bags and putting them in the car, and she gets in the car, and he's talking. Well, she's pretty chilly. So he starts to get annoyed. Mm-hmm. And then they have this full blown argument, and it blows up fast.
It does.
And it ends with her telling him to go to hell.
Yeah.
Which I was like, okay. So he was like, all right, and drives off and leaves her there. And that's the end of that.
That's the end. Yeah.
And she's like, how could I ever have wanted to? So he leaves for the Amazon, and she goes back home and never says another word about Peter. And her dad's like, well, I guess she finally decided to listen to her father like a good girl should. Like, no.
Has no
Drown
idea
John, you're
what
not that
just
powerful.
happened. Yeah.
So that's, and again, it all traces back to the levy, because Peter wasn't even going to go, but his sister was like, oh, you have to take me because no one else can take me. And he's like, fine, I'll take the evening train. He wasn't even going to go. So this all goes back to the levy again. If it wasn't for the levy and the jug, this would not have happened.
Yeah.
And then you've got Margaret.
Yes.
Poor little Margaret, who visits this house that she loves on a fairly common, regular basis, and just walks the gardens and wishes she could buy it. But of course, she doesn't have the money.
And she gets a proposal in the book, too.
She does get a proposal. Someone decides.
And I want to talk about that proposal.
Someone decides
we get to her.
I should get married.
Yes.
So I can have the jug, because Becky didn't approve of bachelors, and he's in his 50s. I think Margaret might be in her probably 40s, maybe late 30s, but I would say
and
40s.
Her guy is Pennicook.
Penny. Yes.
Penny.
His name is hilarious. That's what I love. That's another thing I love about L.M. Montgomery. She'll throw in Roberts and, Rogers and Peters and Anns and Marigolds and stuff like, and Patricias, but then you've got Pennicook. Pennicook. Penny.
And
something.
I want to talk about their proposal, because I thought their reason for getting married was hilarious. Do you remember?
I can't.
Okay, so Pennicook, however you pronounce it, wanted to propose to Margaret, but he kept putting it off until one day someone got gravy on the tablecloth.
That's right.
So he decides to propose to her that day because the house needed a proper mistress.
Yes.
And he goes, because they needed a proper mistress, and he says, I'm just going to go right now and propose to her and get it over with.
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious.
Let's get it over with.
I mean, let's just go and get it over with. If I ever get married, I do not want to marry him just to get it over with.
And
I
then
just thought that was hilarious.
And it doesn't show, it doesn't say there's no actual dialogue of when he proposes, but it pretty much sums up that it takes Margaret a while to figure out what he's saying.
Yeah.
So he's clearly stumbling over, and then she's horrified.
Yeah.
She's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then he's offended because she asked for a week to think it over.
Yes. And do you know why she finally decides to accept his proposal?
I believe it had something to do with finally having a home of her own.
Well, that, and because if she doesn't, she won't have a chance at winning the jug. These people are, they are in a prime location. They are set up to have a great marriage.
Yeah.
Getting married because he needed a proper mistress, and she knew she wouldn't get the jug.
Yes.
That's just hilarious. Mm-hmm. That is so outlandishly hilarious.
And again, we're back to, this is all happening because of the jug.
Yeah.
It all comes back to that.
Everything points back to the jug.
Then we have we have Big Sam and Little Sam who get in the most ridiculous argument. Big Sam is home one night and just, doing his thing, and Little Sam is away at a raffle across the bay, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes home with a fifth place prize. And when Big Sam wakes up, he sees it and he is just horrified, because what it is it's a marble statue of, I mean, probably about, if I had to guess, probably about this tall, because he puts it on a shelf.
He puts it on a shelf.
Probably about that tall, and it's a marble statue of the goddess Aurora, who is the goddess of the dawn, if I remember correctly. Well, as most gods and goddesses are depicted in sculpture. She doesn't have any clothes on.
Mm-hmm.
There's no clothes.
Mhm.
No clothes on her at all. And Big Sam is just horrified. I can't believe you would put that in our house. And Little Sam is, well, and even Little Sam was a little sketchy on it. He was like, do I keep it? He wasn't sure, but because Big Sam is all offended by it, Little Sam is now completely attached to this statue.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, well, she's staying. If you're going to try to tell me what I can have in my house, she's staying and you can go.
Yeah.
But they have this huge fight.
And that is such a family thing to have a fight about such a trivial thing.
And Little Sam is the cook. He's the cook of the two of them. So Big Sam throws his pot out the door, his porridge pot.
Yeah.
And Little Sam goes to retrieve it. And then Big Sam was like, well, I'm packing. I'm leaving. And I loved this because they have a Ouija board. And Big Sam asks, do you want the Ouija board? And Little Sam says, take it. Well, I'm like, you got a problem with a naked statue, but you want the Ouija board?
Right. And I didn't even know Ouija boards were a thing. That I didn't realize.
Oh, yeah, they've
it was
been around
that
for a
old.
long time.
Have they been around?
Yeah,
a
long time. Not good. Don't play with Ouija boards.
No.
No. But he takes the Ouija board, and they have a dog and a cat. He takes the cat. Mustard is his name.
Mustard, that's a hilarious name for a dog.
That's
I'm sorry. Mustard.
No, I think it's the cat that's named Mustard.
Oh, was it the cat? Oh,
I think so. I don't remember.
No.
Maybe.
I
think it's an orange cat.
Oh, okay.
And they named it Mustard.
Oh.
But he takes the cat with him and rents a house. But 3 days later, the cat comes back, and Big Sam comes and gets the cat, and then the cat comes back, and finally he's just like, you know what? He can have the cat. He can just have the cat.
Yeah,
I don't care that much. He probably just lures it back. So he's catless. He adopts some ducks, which made me think of Joey and Chandler on Friends.
Yes.
He's mad, and they're bad mouthing each other to the clan, and he finds out that Little Sam is paying attention to Widow Terwillick, I believe is how you pronounce it, which is another funny name.
That's a funny name.
And so he bad mouths both of them, and they're just talking bad about each other all over the island, and it's so stupid over a statue that Little Sam didn't even really care that much for. But since Big Sam was like, it's either me or the statue, Little Sam was like, well, as it's the statue, then
get yourself out.
So
don't let the door hit you.
And that's so silly. But so
again,
many fights you have with family are silly.
Yeah.
You know? So we've got those two, and they're split up now. And then we get introduced to a person that wasn't at the beginning of the book. His name is Brian. He's a boy. I'm not sure she ever says how old he is, but I can't imagine he's much older than 9.
Yeah, I got the feeling he was young.
He's young. I thought maybe for a second he might be a young teenager, but I think he's younger than that. I think he might be 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
He is born in unfortunate circumstances. He does not have a father, which means his mother was never married. That's what that means.
Yeah. And which one woman is it? Like he tells this woman, toward the end, nobody loves me.
Oh, that's Margaret.
Yeah. Oh, is it Margaret? Okay. Yeah.
We'll get to that.
That broke my heart.
Yeah. And he's just a very unloved little boy. His mother died when he was still a baby, and I guess her brother maybe took him in, but he sleeps in the loft in the barn. His aunt doesn't like him. They barely feed him. I just can't imagine. I have a niece and a nephew. I cannot imagine treating them that way. And I know there are people out there today that still treat children that way.
Yeah.
And it just enrages me. But every time we went to Brian's point of view, my heart just broke.
Yeah.
And he's unloved. He doesn't have any friends. He's about halfway through the book. This kitten finds him in his loft. Yeah. He names it Cricket.
And him and this cat love each other.
And they love each other. His aunt won't let him have cats. Won't let him have anything, apparently. So he lives in fear that they're going to find out about the cat.
Yeah.
So we've got Brian, who doesn't really care one bit about the Jug. All he wants is someone to love him.
He just wants someone to love him.
He's the only character, I think, for whom the Jug never really enters his thoughts. But they all enter the character's thoughts in one form or another.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate to say weave, but the way she weaves all these characters around each other, and they never quite. It's not like it's that's how they all meet at the end. It's not like that. But these people are all in each other's lives. Hugh and Jocelyn. Those were the other characters who have been married for 10 years and never lived together.
Yeah.
Which is, I was like, how does that happen? Well,
I bet they had separate bank accounts.
Turns out, but they've never gotten a divorce because divorce is pretty unheard of in the clan. And apparently there's only been one on the island so far. So they've just been living separately, her at her father's house and him at the house he bought for them. But it turns out, it's so silly. It turns out, on the day of their wedding, as she walks up the aisle, the person she sees first is not Hugh, but his best man, who she's never met before, Frank. Mm-hmm. And she looks up and she sees Frank, and it's kind of like Peter and Donna. She sees Frank and she's like, I don't love Hugh. I love Frank.
Yeah.
So she's just going through the motions during this wedding because she's just stunned.
Lots of drama in this book.
So much drama. She's just stunned, and Hugh's, all, and of course everyone's, the shy bride, Hugh is just beaming because he loves Jocelyn so much. And they get in their carriage or car, I can't remember which, and they're headed for home. And it's once they get home that Hugh realizes this is more than just a bride with wedding night jitters. She's terrified. So he finally asks her, like, what's wrong? What's the matter? And she tells him, I'm in love with Frank. And I'm just like,
out of the blue.
How do you?
Yeah.
I'm in love with Frank. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And so he tells her to go, and go she does.
Go she does.
She leaves the house.
Post haste.
Wedding dress and all, and goes back to her family home. And
she's walking down the road in her wedding dress, and Uncle Pippin sees her and thinks she's a ghost because
that's the end.
Oh, that's at the end. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just,
I thought that was funny. Yeah.
That was funny.
He thought she was a ghost because it's so weird to see a bride walking down a dirt road.
So that's the big secret. Neither one of them has told their families. The only person that knew was Aunt Becky, and Aunt Becky died at the beginning of the book. So they're still the only two that know. And it's just such a ridiculous.
Yeah.
So ridiculous. But
it is.
Those are our main stories throughout the book.
Yes. And I do want to say Aunt Becky's grave. Her headstone cost $1,000 in 1930.
That's a lot of money.
I was like, most people today don't have grave headstones that cost $1,000.
Oh, that's
and it was a big obelisk top thing, if I remember correctly. And I remember when I read that, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That seemed like a lot of money for a headstone in that day.
Quite a bit. But throughout the book, you've got, and this is what I love about L.M. Montgomery, is her ability to paint a picture is second to none.
Yes.
If you have any sort of imagination at all, you should have no trouble picturing what she's writing about, picturing the people she's writing about. And sometimes she writes about people in such a funny way, too. Some of her descriptions of characters are the best.
Now, sometimes I did feel like she rambled
She tends to. It doesn't bother me, but I understand that it could bother some people. I remember
at one point thinking, "My goodness, this is the longest 200-page book I have ever read."
She likes her adjectives.
Yeah,
she does like her adjectives.
Like her adjectives. Yeah,
and I understand how some people would not have. I love it.
Yeah,
but I tend to only love it in her books. Right.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's a bias or what.
Yeah.
Any other writer, I'm just like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Get on with it.
There were a couple times when I was like, okay, I'm over this, and I skipped a page. I was like, whoa.
There were a couple of love scenes that were a little mushy, but it wasn't bad.
No, it wasn't bad.
Never anything more than kissing, a few kisses, and they're only mentioned. We've got
and it's kind of, when I run across a book that does not have any like major romance in it, I'm just thrilled. It is hard to find a book that does not have a romance. It's like, not everybody wants to read a romance.
It's true. And while romance is featured, it's not really the main function of the book, because I would argue that really Gay sort of has two main relationships. One is with Nan and one is with Roger in the book, as far as what you see. And the dynamic between her and Nan is very interesting. So I would say she's definitely one of the characters that does not have necessarily a romantic relationship with anyone. Big Sam and Little Sam do not have a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
With each other.
You know where the romances are, but it's not drawn out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I enjoyed.
Yes. It was helpful. You're still in a place in history where you're between horse-drawn carriages and cars. So that's interesting.
And I remember being a little bit surprised when they first mentioned cars, because again, I'm not a big historical fan and I'm not a big fan of classic fiction. And so like in my mind, when I'm reading a classic book, like cars and electricity don't exist.
Right.
You know, so like at the first mention of a car, I was like, what?
It always surprises me.
Yeah.
When they pop up in an L.M. Montgomery book, because what I was used to was Anne.
Yeah.
But even in the Anne series, cars come along a little later, because they go all the way up to the end of World War One. And there were cars on the road by then.
Yeah.
It just, you think horses and horse-drawn carriages.
You do,
and, the slow life and things like that. But every character was, if not interesting, then at least intriguing.
Yeah, and in a way, there was a lot of, if you have a sense of humor or can appreciate a sense of humor, there was a lot of humor in the book. And I almost got the feeling that this was like a 1930 Gilmore Girls, because
a little bit,
because there was just so much kind of obnoxious type humor.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. So and there was definitely a back and forth with the dialogue, and you do get that with that.
And I love a good quippy, sharp, I like that.
Yes. For sure.
Humor, that sharp humor.
I don't know how far we want to go into the end of the stories, if we want to just kind of discuss everyone's ending or spoilery. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got.
So we'll say at this point forward, if you don't want to hear anything, we're going to consider this point forward a spoiler zone. So you've been warned.
Exactly. So we've got Gay, who decides, she doesn't decide it that way. It's a few months later. She's been hanging out with Roger after she breaks her, Noel breaks his engagement to her, because that's just, Noel sucks. Sends her a letter releasing her from their engagement. Like, oh, thanks. So she's just kind of been pitiful for months, and during that time she's hung around with Roger, and they've been friends, and he's taken her on spins in his car, and finally he's just like, I can't take this anymore, because it's got to be torture. He's absolutely desperately in love with this girl, and he's being her friend, and people always get annoyed with, well, he can't have what he wants, so he's just. Do y'all get how hard it is to be in love with someone and not have them love you back, not have any hope of them loving you back? Why would he want to be around her? So that hurts. Yeah. That's painful. So I don't blame him for putting it this way. He's like, you've either got to marry me or we got to stop this. We got to stop. And she agrees.
Yeah.
She says, well, she says, I don't love you. He said, I know, but she agrees to marry him.
Sometimes it happens.
She does. And then, of course, Nan comes by. And she does this after Nan and Noel are engaged. And then Nan comes by one evening a few months later and says, oh, we're not engaged. I just wanted to take you from him. I told you I could.
Yeah.
I told you I would, and I did. And now I'm bored. And
she's the Nellie Olson of L.M. Montgomery.
Nellie Olson without a redemption arc is what's happened here.
Yes.
Nellie Olson without Percival.
Yes. Yes.
So she's just like, well, I did what I wanted to do, and Mom wants me to marry this person that has a lot of money. So I guess, his money will outlast his looks. And she says, Noel's free. You can have him back if you want him. And it's Gay that comes. I loved what she said to Nan after that. I can't remember everything, but she reads Nan like a book. Mm-hmm. And it's, she ate and left no crumbs. In talking to Nan, and even Nan is kind of deflated as she leaves. She doesn't really feel some of her triumph has gone away, which is nice. Mm-hmm. So then, of course, Gay is just in all sorts of, because she still loves Noel.
Yeah.
And wants Noel. And Noel is very obliging by helping Gay out the only time he's helped her out at all. Because he has the audacity to just come by the house one evening and try and be charming and, says, oh, I never really loved Nan and, all this stuff. And
too little too late, buddy.
Just, all this stuff, and takes her in his arms, and she's just standing there going, she'd probably be feeling something.
Are you being
by now.
For real right now?
And he's trying to say all these lovey-dovey things to her, and she starts to laugh, which that's not a good sign, guys.
Yeah, if you're professing your love and she's cracking up, you're not in a good place.
She finds him ridiculous now. She realizes that everything her family has been saying
is true.
About him was true. She hates that they were right, but at the same time, she recognizes that they were. And she just pretty much sends him packing.
And on some level, do you think she knew?
I think she knew and just
didn't want to admit
first
it.
Love.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
First love is a powerful thing.
It's a powerful thing.
Yeah. Good thing for that year-long wait.
Exactly.
But yeah, he just thought he was going to saunter back in and all would be forgiven.
I'm just going to be charming and she'll take me back.
No, she was not impressed. Yeah. And so he leaves, and then Roger comes, and that's when she tells him she loves him, because that's when she realizes she actually loves Roger. Mm-hmm. It's maybe not the butterflies and L.M. Montgomery writes a lot about that. Maybe it's not the butterflies and the heart rate speed up, and maybe it's this comfort and this security and connection, and which they had that in the beginning, even in their friendship.
Yeah.
So I liked how that turned out.
And there was a time in history when women married for that. They married for security. They didn't. They married because they wanted someone to take care of them.
That's true. And friendship is very important in a marriage, and they had that in spades even before they started, running around together in the car and everything. And there's an age difference with Roger and Gay. It would be concerning to people now. It didn't hold the taboo then. Mm-hmm. If you're 18, you're technically grown.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, if you're 18, you're grown now. but most people would have strong objections to a 32-year-old and an 18-year-old dating, which I think by the time they decided to date, she was 19, but still.
Well, I mean, in our contemporary times, I mean, that would still, like, wouldn't that still be considered statutory rape? Don't you have to be 21?
No.
Is it 18?
It depends on the state. I think in Arkansas, it's 17.
Oh, is it that low? Oh,
it might be 18.
Wow.
I'm not sure.
Huh. Anyway, that's a rabbit hole. It doesn't matter. Yeah. That's a rabbit trail.
Yeah, it was much more accepted at the time. You know, my grandma got married in the 50s, and she was 16 years old.
Yeah.
It was not uncommon.
Yeah.
Young people then were more mature. The teenage era of life didn't really come into being as we know it until, I think, the late 40s.
Oh, is that right?
50s. If you
what
helped,
precipitated that change? Do you know?
Probably post-war.
Oh, well, war
era.
Will change. That does have a way of changing.
I would say the post-war era and the post-war boom, and what did teenagers have to be worried about? They, unless they were working on the farms and stuff like that, they had
and
access.
A lot of them were. Yeah,
that's what I'm not a historian, so I don't know, but I have heard that before. That the teenage time, as we know it today, really didn't come around until society shifted, and maybe some in the 30s and 40s, but really, teenagers, teeny boppers, 50s.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and when I see movies and stuff centered around the 50s, I'm always like, oh my gosh, that seems like such a nice life compared to what we have today. And I know they had their hurdles and obstacles back then too. But
the age difference would be objectionable today, but it was not super uncommon back then. And it would be something that L.M. Montgomery would be familiar with.
For sure.
Then we have Hugh and Jocelyn, which is resolved in a very odd manner. One day, Frank comes back to the island. He's been out west all this time. He came to the island for the wedding.
The Amazon?
No.
Okay.
No, this is the one that Jocelyn fell in love with on her wedding day.
Oh, okay.
She saw him and she fell in love with
Frank. Okay.
Frank has no clue, by the way, that any of this has happened. He was out west before the wedding. He came to the island for the wedding. Jocelyn fell in love with him. He left right after the wedding and hasn't been back since. She's carried a torch for this man for 10 years. Never seen him again. But he decides, I think his sister or his cousin or whatever, decides she wants a shot at this jug. Again, back to the jug.
Back to the jug.
And so he brings her out just in time for, I think, just a few months before they're going to announce who gets the jug. So he brings her back to the island, and they're at church, and Jocelyn sees him and goes, "What have I been thinking all this time?" Because he's nothing, your memory can hold you prisoner.
Oh, for sure.
Which is what it's done with Jocelyn. This lean, dark-haired, dark-eyed man that she's been in love with all this time. It's nothing, he's kind of gone to seed. You can tell he's kind of had a rough time of it. Maybe business out west, not so good. He's not married. And she's looking at him and she's just like, what have I done? This can't be Frank. And what's funny is they're all trapped in this, because they're all at church, but they all got there late. So there's a prayer going on and no one wants to walk in during the prayer. Mm-hmm. So they're all in the church porch. And she's there and Frank's there and several other people are there. But the funny part about it is that Hugh is standing right behind Jocelyn. And he sees Frank too. And he chuckles. And Jocelyn thinks that he's laughing at her. But he's laughing because here's Frank, this man he's hated all these years. Mm-hmm. And now he just kind of feels sorry for him because he's let himself go. He's clearly fond of the drink, I believe. So now he's just kind of laughing at himself and laughing at Frank and finding the whole thing ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he's been under pressure to get a divorce, to go to the States and get an American divorce from Jocelyn. His mother's been pressuring him to do that and to marry Pauline, his cousin.
Mm-hmm.
And Pauline is in love with him, so she has no problem with that. And it's after this that Jocelyn is finally like, well, no, the accident, there's an accident. This pig.
Yes.
Wait, was it the pig on this one?
The letter.
Yes.
Yeah,
there was a pig involved.
Yes.
So back to the jug.
This is the
two
executor.
members of a family.
Yeah.
Two members of the family get in an argument that turns into a fist fight over this jug. And they're supposed to be keeping an eye on this pig. Well, the pig wanders away while they're in a fist fight over this jug, wanders onto, I believe she called it the King's Highway, which is apparently a busy road. There's a motorcycle coming out one way. Hugh is coming the other way in his car. The motorcycle hits the pig. Both the occupants of the motorcycle are thrown, not killed, but thrown. The pig's dead.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, the car has to swerve to avoid the motorcycle because it messes the motorcycle up and it's probably in the road. And
again, motorcycles were a thing in the mind blown.
So Hugh is upside down in a little ravine. Not a steep one, but just a little ravine, and they have to get him out of the car. Everyone's injured, so they have to take him all to the hospital. And by the time Jocelyn hears about it, it's blown all out of proportion, and who's dead and who's injured and she can't bear the thought that Hugh could be dead.
Yeah.
Not knowing that she didn't really love Frank after all. It's just this idea of him. So she's just racked with guilt and finally finds out Hugh's okay. And it takes her days to finally work up the courage to go to their home and apologize to him and hope that he will take her back.
Mm-hmm.
And to his credit, he does not say yes right away.
He does not.
No, he tells her,
Yep.
You go home and you put on your wedding dress and your veil and come to me as a bride.
This is where Uncle Pippin sees her and thinks she's a ghost.
And we will talk.
Yeah.
So.
And she does it.
And at this point, she has no pride at all. She's like, okay. She goes home, puts on her wedding dress, puts on her veil, and walks. She hitched a ride partway there the first time. Walks all the way back to the house. And at this point, Uncle Pippin's driving by and he freaks out because he thinks there's a ghost on the road because it's evening at this point. And she's just
I don't know why that cracked me up that he thought she was a ghost.
So, and then he realizes it's her in her wedding dress. And what decent young woman is out in a wedding dress and veil at this time of night? And no one believes him. They're like, oh, he's gone round the bend. There's no way Jocelyn would do that.
He's a crazy old man.
So she goes back to Hugh and he forgives her, of course. Because he loves her. So that's resolved.
And we got to have at least one happy ending in the book.
Yeah. So that's resolved. And then we come to Peter and Donna. Peter finally comes back. He's been in the Amazon all this time and it's just, he's tortured.
Yes.
He can't stand not being around Donna. He has to have her. Meanwhile, Donna's just been back here hating him fiercely. Like, she takes after her father. He hasn't written, he hasn't communicated with, he left for the Amazon, didn't say boo to her. So she is furious. And he comes back just, he's really, really hopeless. Just expects her to fall into his arms, walks up to her in the churchyard, and I think after church. And I guess acts like maybe he's going to hug her or touch her or something. And she just turns around on her heels and walks away in front of everyone.
In front of everyone, yeah.
So now he's angry.
She's making a point.
She's making a point. And she's still furious with him. She wants nothing to do with him. And I can't remember how they finally got it resolved, but
all I know is they're going to France.
Yeah, they do end up together. But I didn't. She wound up being the one to apologize to him, which she was the one that was chilly first.
She was.
She was.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But I felt he also owed an apology.
Yes.
But it doesn't say anything about him apologizing, because of course not.
Yeah, of course not.
And then you've got Margaret, who does not. She winds up not marrying Penny because they just both. They're like, no, this is a bad idea. Well, Penny goes to her and says, I think we should not get married. I don't think this is. And he's, of course, offended when she agrees. It's so funny because every time
I can say it, but you can't.
He thinks she should be upset. And she's just like, oh, I'm so glad. It's like, wait, why are you glad? How dare you? How dare you?
Yeah.
But she's not feeling it. She's been sewing up her dresses for her trousseau all this time and just finding no joy in it. But she's also just gotten word that what Aunt Becky left her was a copy of Pilgrim's Progress, a first edition of Pilgrim's Progress. And she has discovered that it's worth quite a bit of money. So she has sold her copy of Pilgrim's Progress, and she is buying the house that she has loved all this time.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, she has run into little Brian, poor little Brian, who is out in a storm one night trying to track down cows. And
because his dad told him not to come home until
his uncle told him not.
Or his uncle.
Yeah, don't come home till you find him. And he winds up at Little Sam's looking for these cows, asking Little Sam if he's seen them. Little Sam, no. But the storm's fixing to really get bad. Why don't you come in, warm up, have some chowder? Mm-hmm. And then it gets really bad. And he's, why don't you stay the night? So he stays the night, worried, of course, about Cricket.
Mm-hmm.
And when he gets home, he discovers that his uncle slept in his loft. There's a strange car outside. So that means guests have shown up. There weren't enough beds for everyone. So his uncle slept in the loft.
Which is where Brian,
which is where Brian usually sleeps. And his uncle says, did you find the cows? And he said, no, but I think I have a lead on them. And then he says, if you adopted a cat, because what was with the cat that jumped in? So he just comes around at night sometimes. Well, he won't anymore because I wrung his neck. And I'm like,
yes.
Poor little Cricket and poor Brian. So Brian buries Cricket. And
I'm not a cat person, but that infuriated me.
Oh, it was just so sad.
Yeah.
And he's just beside himself, of course. And he escapes.
What kind of person does that? Yeah.
He escapes to the cemetery where his mother's grave is. And he's talking to his mother. No one loves me. I miss you. All this stuff.
Yeah.
And Margaret is nearby. And she sees him and says, oh, what is Laura's boy doing here? And she talks to him for a little bit. And she's always dreamed of having this little golden-haired, blue-eyed, dimpled baby to take care of. And the book, it says in the book, she says all her dreams just vanished in an instant, and all she wanted was Brian.
Yeah.
So, Brian, why don't you come live with me? So there's your happy ending with Margaret and Brian.
Yes.
Because they have each other now.
And I want a book about them.
I do kind of want a book about them. But they're happy. And they're together now.
Yeah.
And then I think that basically leaves Big Sam and Little Sam. Big Sam gets stuck in a crevice near the shore.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to die if he doesn't get out. How does it go? Who finds him? Was it Little Sam?
I think it was Little Sam, wasn't
it? Big Sam is stuck in a crevice.
Yes.
And the tide, he's probably going to die if he doesn't get out of there.
Yes.
And Little Sam happens across it, and they have their back and forth. Little Sam's like, well,
yeah,
you're going to die, you're going to die. I can't do anything about it. And even says, come, just give this up. Come back home.
Yeah.
You want to.
Yeah.
And says, well, are you going to get rid of that statue? Nope. Then I'm not coming home. Oh, well, then you can stay there. They're so stubborn.
Adios.
But he does finally give in as long as Big Sam promises he's not going to marry the widow Terwillick.
Mm-hmm.
So, or no, it's Little Sam promises. Yeah. So Little Sam helps Big Sam out of the crevice and they go home.
Mm-hmm.
And the that brings us to the very end of the book, which we won't cover right this second. But the affair of the jug, to begin with, well, that's how Peter and Donna finally get together, because Dandy, who's had the jug, his house catches on fire. He's not home.
Yes,
he's away.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the clans all gathered around. What do we do? What do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they find out that the jug, or no, Dandy gets home after the fire has started, and he says the jug is in the spare room closet. Well, it's too late for the spare room, because the spare room is the part that's on fire.
Yeah.
Well, Peter is there. He's like, well, Donna wants that jug, so I better save the jug.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes in. Everyone's like, no.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. He goes in to save the jug. And while he's headed towards the spare room, he trips over a body on the ground. And while he's in there, that's when they find out that Donna was staying the night at Dandy's house, because she was helping Dandy's wife do something with dams and preserves, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it got late, and Dandy's wife just said, why don't you stay over and just spend the night?
Yeah.
So she was sleeping in the spare room. And when Peter's in there, and that's what everyone, he knew Donna was here, so he wasn't after the jug, he was after Donna.
Yeah.
And Peter's in there, and he trips over this. Oh, well, I've got to save this person, whoever it is. Smoke's so thick he can't tell. And he's like, well, goodbye, jug. So he grabs the person and carries them outside. And it isn't until he's outside that he realizes it's Donna.
Yeah.
So he has saved Donna. And that's when that's how they get together. Donna apologizes, and they get together, and Drowned John says, you saved her life. You can have her.
You can have her.
If and they have the big wedding, and then they're off on their adventures
to France
or wherever they want to go.
Yeah.
But with the jug, what's happened is,
keep in mind, you've gone all the entire book waiting to see who
gets this jug.
Yes.
Who's getting this jug?
Yes.
And it's been a year for these people. So they finally come to the gathering, and everyone's been like, Dandy's been acting a little weird these last few weeks.
Yeah. And he's the executor of,
and
Becky's
he's the executor. He's the one that's supposed to open the paper and say who gets the jug.
Yeah.
So he finally gets up there and says, I don't know who's supposed to get this jug. But what do you mean you don't know? Well, she put it on a piece of paper, sealed with wax and everything. It's on a piece of paper. And he lost the piece of paper. He's pretty sure why wouldn't you put the piece of paper up somewhere? I guess to keep his wife out of it or something.
Yeah.
Or in a lockbox at the bank. I don't know. Was that a thing back then? I have no idea.
But something. But he keeps it in his pocket, and he says, I guess it fell out of my pocket while I was taking care of the pigs, and the pigs must have eaten it. And pigs will eat anything. So I have no idea. But why would he not read it? Like, when she first,
he promised he wouldn't.
Well, I mean, I probably would have. Even if I promised it, I probably would have.
So at least he's a man of his word.
True.
And
what does that say about me?
So everyone's just like, well, should we draw lots? Should we do this? Should we do that? And someone, I can't remember who is it Drowned John, that's just had enough. And I believe he picks up the jug and goes to throw it at the mantle to smash it.
He wants to smash it.
Yeah, can't believe all this is happening.
Yes.
And someone catches him. It might be Roger. I'm not sure. But someone catches his arm, but it's not enough to stop the jug from being thrown. The jug gets thrown, but it hits one of the family members square in the head. Now, this family member he went to war. He got married and he went off to war. And when he came back, he did not remember his wife. So she's been taking care of him and living with him. And he's fond of her, but he doesn't remember her as his wife. He doesn't remember he loves her. He knows her as his nurse now, his living nurse.
Yeah.
But apparently they loved each other passionately before he left for the war. So it's just kind of a tragic story. But his arm getting caught throws the trajectory of the jug off. The jug hits the guy in the forehead, shatters, falls to the ground like 1,000 pieces.
Yeah.
It's done.
It destroys
there
the
is
jug.
no fixing this jug.
Yeah.
And this guy jumps up and turns and looks at his wife and says, Naomi.
The
He
jug
remembers.
knocked the sense back into
He
him.
remembers, which, I've always heard all my life, cases of amnesia
Yeah.
sometimes being undone with another jolt to the head.
Another trauma. Yeah.
So that's what happens there. But yeah, no one gets the jug.
No one gets
the jug.
And we
That's
don't know
the
who
end.
was supposed to get it. Yeah.
But lots of things happen because of the jug.
Yes.
Because of the jug,
He got his
Brian
jug.
found a happy home and Margaret got her house. Because of the jug, Peter and Donna got married. Because of the jug, Roger and Gay got together.
So the jug worked its magic.
The jug worked its magic, but there's no jug
There's
to
no jug.
hand out to anyone. Now, the very end of the book is Big Sam and Little Sam reconciling, and they get home, and Big Sam finds that Little Sam has painted the statue, and he's painted it bronze, which I was like, why would you paint it bronze?
Yeah.
But, why would you have a naked statue in the first place? Then that's where the word comes in. That's not a good word. And at the time in society, while it was not considered necessarily offensive, it was considered a not nice word, which is why she has one of them saying it. But it was not a polite word. It was not nice.
It's a racial slur.
It is a racial slur. It's not a word we condone at all.
No, not at all.
But it was a word that was commonly used at the time.
Yeah.
And she would have put it in terms of a coarse person.
Yes.
Using that word, not a well-mannered person. It was not a polite word, but it was not, it was the 20s. That's all I can say.
And I'm able to keep things in the reviews.
I'm not excusing it. It's just
not excusing it, but in the reviews, people skewered her for the last two sentences.
But it was not an uncommon word.
Exactly.
It
And that's
did
what
not
I'm saying.
carry. I'm not saying it shouldn't have carried the stigma. It does now.
Yeah.
But it didn't then.
It didn't then.
And you know what? That was wrong.
And that's why you have to consider the time
It was
that it was
wrong.
written in. Yeah.
But it was wrong that it wasn't considered
Yeah.
the same way it is now.
Yeah.
But people grow and learn, and society grows and learns, and that's what's happened.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was not considered necessarily offensive, but more impolite.
Which opens up another conversation that I kind of wanted to get your opinion on. In a lot of the reviews, a lot of the reviewers made the comment that they really enjoyed the book, but the last couple of sentences should have been removed from the book, the publishing company, which I view as censorship. What do you think? What's your opinion?
I don't agree with removing things.
I don't either.
Just because it offends you.
I don't either.
It's
wrong.
Is it the least favorite thing she's ever written that I've read? Yes. I didn't care for it. I didn't like it. That doesn't mean I hate her.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote what she knew. And at the time, she knew that as an impolite word that someone coarse like Big Sam
Yeah.
would have used.
Yeah. And I wonder if, like, in the time that she wrote it, I wonder if people, when they read that, I wonder if they were like,
it might have been a little,
like, if it was a shock value
shocking.
to it.
There might have been a little bit of a shock value to it.
Or at the very least, a sort of, I can't believe she went there.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I just don't know
Yeah.
how people of that time would have responded to it.
It's not a word that would have been used in polite society.
Mhm.
And she was a member of polite society. I highly doubt she ever used it herself.
She wasn't
other
trying
than
to
in
be
this-
offensive.
I don't think she was trying to be offensive. But I don't agree with removing things just because they offend you, because
I don't either.
when you start erasing stuff, how do you learn from it?
Exactly.
You know, was that a nice word to put? No,
Yeah.
of course it wasn't. It wasn't considered particularly nice at the time, but it did not have, people did not consider it offensive back then. They consider it offensive now, and it is offensive.
It is offensive. It's very offensive.
It's a very offensive word.
I mean, when I read it, my mouth dropped open.
Mine did too.
It really did.
Mine did too. I was like,
yeah.
What happened?
Because that's just not a word
happened?
that you hear in our society.
No. And it shouldn't be a word that you hear in our
shouldn't.
society.
Yeah, there's absolutely no occasion to ever use a word like that.
But
and I'll say there are racial slurs. People call white people honky. That is not rice. There are racial slurs for every race.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just that word.
Should you use racial slurs at all? No, you shouldn't use it.
No
one
racial
should use
slur
racial
is
slurs.
okay.
But that's just indicative that is indicative of how a society grows and changes.
Yeah.
And we have grown and changed, and that is not an acceptable word to use under any circumstance,
Well,
and nor should it be.
And for my reasoning is, if you remove something like that, where's the line? Where do you stop?
Yeah.
You know, he wanted to marry her because the house needed a proper mistress. In our day, that would be considered an offensive notion, because women are not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, how far do you go?
So if you're going to erase that because it's offensive, are you also going to erase the reason? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where do you stop?
It was a different time.
It was a different time, and you have to read it with the lens of that book was not written in our time. It was written in their time. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you have to kind of be a little bit, even though you don't like it. I didn't like that word, but you have to read it with the understanding of that was their time. It was wrong then. It was wrong now, but that was their time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the only sentence I've ever read by her that I didn't like.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I'm sad that she used it, but you know what?
But she's still your favorite author. You don't want her canceled.
No, I don't do the cancel thing.
Yeah.
If I don't agree with someone, I'll boycott a company or something like that. I just won't buy from them anymore.
Exactly.
But
you don't go on a crusade.
This is what she knew.
Yeah.
It's what she knew. No one told her that's an offensive word. No one told her that.
Yeah.
It was
because in her day, was it offensive, or was it just considered impolite?
It was considered impolite. There were words that ladies did not use, and there were words that certain
well, and really, you can't. People today,
echelons of society.
People today really can't throw stones, because I mean, the F word is impolite, but it sure doesn't stop them from filming books and movies with it.
And you get laughed at when you say, "Please don't say that word. That offends me."
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Look, Goody Two Shoes is offended.
Yeah. People today are offended by God unless it's got a D word behind it.
Yeah. And it again, I will say, it is an offensive word, and I don't agree with its use. But that's what happened.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's just.
So I'm interested to know, so you just said it's your least favorite book of hers. So, like, on a scale of 1 to 5, what would you rate this book?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's my least favorite book.
Of hers.
But that that sentence is unfortunate. And I wish it wasn't in there, but she wrote it, so.
Overall, just like taking that out, like overall, like what did you think of the book? Like compared to like Anne of Green Gables?
I mean, it's hard to compare to Anne of Green Gables. It was a very different style for her, again, because there were so many characters to keep up with, and usually there's just the one main, usually a heroine, with friends and maybe a romantic interest in family around them. But you're almost always in the point of view of the main character. So this was a little different, but I really enjoyed it. I'd say still a 4.
A 4, okay. I wasn't a total fan of it. I didn't hate it.
Well, it's a lot to keep up with.
It was a lot
of
to
characters
keep up with.
Yeah.
I gave it a 3 on Goodreads. Amazon shut me down and won't let me leave reviews anymore on Amazon because apparently I offended them by using a scripture in a verse, so they shut me down.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Huh.
So anyway, I gave it a 3. So it wasn't my favorite book, but I can find value of any book. I did get some chuckles out of it, and I'm glad I read it.
I'd say anywhere between a 3.5 and a 4. I have pretty much all her books are going to get at least a 4 from me. There's a few that get a 5.
Yeah. Well, just because someone's your favorite author doesn't mean every book's a 5-star. I love Mary Higgins Clark, but there are probably some books that and most of her books I would give a 5-star just because I love her books. But there are some that would probably get a 4. So,
No, I enjoyed the book, and I'm glad we read it.
I am too.
It was fun.
Thank you for bringing it to my attention. So we've been on here for a while, so we probably need to start wrapping this up. But I do want to talk about next month's book, or the next book. You're going to be shocked.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's science fiction.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a Christian book. I was going to choose another book by another author, but it was a secular book. And since we did this secular book, I really didn't want to do 2 secular books in a row because our primary focus on this channel is going to be Christian fiction. So anyway, we'll save that one for a little bit down the road. Okay. So this is a Christian fiction. It's science fiction. It's a time traveler book.
Interesting.
It's called Transgression, City of God, I think. Hang on a second. I'm sorry. I'm looking at my phone. City of God, Book 1, Transgression by R.S. Inger Manson. And so it's in the year 57. So it goes, they time travel back to the year 57. An assassination attempt was made on the Apostle Paul, who was visiting Jerusalem. Paul's nephew was in the thick of the plot. 2 witnesses from the future, Rivka and Ari, were there to see it all. A third person, Damien West, was there to make it happen. This is their story. So it bounces. So the people from now go back to the future, apparently, to try to save the Apostle Paul from an assassination attempt.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. So it's a time travel book.
Interesting.
Does that sound?
Yeah.
It's not.
I'm intrigued.
Like science fiction is not my genre.
No,
at
I
all.
know.
So, but I thought it sounded kind of interesting, and it's. I know you kind of like fantasy some.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we'll see if we both get it. If we both and it's available on Kindle Unlimited. If any of the listeners want to read it along with us, it's on Kindle Unlimited. If you have Kindle Unlimited. So anyway, so that's unless we both get into it and hate it and decide to abandon it. I mean, I'm not going to say that won't ever happen. But I think
we're going to try to make sure it doesn't. But
yeah. But I think that's the book I chosen for the next one.
Okay, then.
All right. You got anything you want to say before we shut this down for 2 weeks? All right. So we're going to head out, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Bookish Introverts podcast, where together we explore the worlds within the pages. Until next time, stay bookish.